as well. So
me too. My wife, it irritates the shit out of my wife, but there we go. Welcome back, everybody. We were just chatting there, and obviously we were just mentioning the fact that I can talk for England, and as can today's guest, it would seem. So hope everyone's had a wonderful week. I'm going to pass you straight over to today's guest to introduce herself, and then we'll get ourselves started. So good afternoon, Helena. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for handing over to me. Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure.
My introduction of myself, I pronounce it Helena.
Helena.
And surname is Bourdillon, which is just easier to go with a Helena. I am a breath trainer, a free diver, and a mental health advocate. I think you came across me on Instagram.
I did.
Was that through breathing? Was it through free diving?
I literally don't know. I think it's the free diving, because I think you came up, I can't remember why, but I was very much, I still do very much just love seeing beautiful pictures of people underwater holding their breath. And
it's a sport
I think
that lends itself.
Oh, you've got so many beautiful photos, and I think one of them came up, and now I say that, I think it was a video clip of you maybe breaking one of your records, and I saw you were English, and I kind of clicked on it and followed, and and I had a little look through your stuff, and I think that might have been where I saw it. Now I think about it, I can't quite remember, but yes, basically Instagram. So so you're a free diver.
I am a free diver, and for those who don't know what it is, it's quite simply breath hold diving. If you've ever been in a swimming pool or in the sea and gone under the surface and held your breath to see how long you could do it, don't advise you to do it by yourself. You are effectively a free diver, and we all, there's a theory that goes around that I kind of subscribe to. When you're in utero, in the womb, you're surrounded by water, you're not breathing, it's very comfortable. And actually, I find doing my warm-up dives is quite a lot like that. I'm floating at, I'm floating at a shallow-ish depth, and just really relaxing in the water, and feels very safe and comfortable. But anyway, we've all pretty much tried free diving. I take it to a little bit more extreme levels, where I do tend to compete sometimes. Haven't done for a few years, but hoping to get back to it this year. So, but you've done some free diving as well, haven't you?
I have, not enough. I have spent 10 days basically free diving out in Cyprus with Pavlos, who's he's essentially the Cypriot champ, record holder, and he runs the AIDA courses out there. But yeah, so I spent 10 days, and I managed to, or like 8 days I think it was, and I managed to dive to like 24.5 meters.
Fantastic.
And in the pool I did 75 meters, and then I think my static time was, at the time, was about 3:40 or something like that.
That's not bad for a beginner.
No, well, I spend a lot of time lying on my sofa first thing in the morning and just holding my breath. So my static dry time is like 5:37 or something now. So that's
longer than my in the water static.
But I
don't enjoy it at all. I don't train it.
No, I definitely think people enjoy it. I actually found that holding my breath in water when I was out there was a shorter time than it was out of water. So actually I found it easier holding my breath.
Quite contrary.
I know, it makes no sense, but
it's probably because you're so used to practicing it dry.
Yes,
you're not as relaxed and comfortable in the water. Give it another 10 days in the water, and you might find you're smashing 6 minutes easily.
Well, I just need to find somewhere to go and do it now, but there we go. So we're going to come back to free diving in a bit, because I love it. And we're going to go into some of the reasons why I love it, and I think it's why you probably love it, because I think it's why most people probably love it. But I want to go into potentially more of the mental health side first, because I kind of feel that, this is let's say the heavy bit, but also I feel it's probably the most important bit, but it's also the bit which probably has led you to the free diving to a certain degree anyway.
was an interesting story because I talk very openly about my mental health, and that came about in 2017 when I suddenly realized I was very happy to talk about my own journey. And what I talk about was in 2000, early 2000, I was at rock bottom. I was absolutely desperate, and I was preparing to commit suicide. Somehow, from somewhere, I managed to find the strength to ask for help, to just reach out. And it was actually to a complete stranger. It was to my GP. And bless him, he heard the desperation, and he took me under his wing. Even in just that one visit, he kind of took me under his wing. And over a very long and bumpy road, I kind of I got off rock bottom. I wasn't doing amazingly, but I at least wasn't planning my suicide anymore. And I fell into meditation. I was introduced to kind of Buddhism, and happened to fall into meditation, which was great because that really helped take the blinkers off. Because I find with depression I get so insular and I can't see beyond my own eyelashes, quite frankly. And it suddenly opened me up, and while it doesn't sound very nice thing to say, I suddenly realized I wasn't the only one hurting. And that created some sort of sense of community, of I'm not actually alone. I wasn't happy that other people were hurting, but it was the fact that I wasn't alone, and there were many other people, and some of them were actually possibly hurting more than me, but that wasn't a detail really that is of relevance, because if someone's got to that stage where they're that desperate, it does matter what got them there, but in that initial instant, that's irrelevant. You've got to help them out of that situation.
Absolutely.
And then they unpack. So found Buddhism. I was recommended a therapist who I've actually been working with on and off since. She is fantastic. When I'm in the UK, I go down and see her. She's the other side of London. And we've been working for many years, and the difference is, and we've been working on and off, I think for 17 years we worked out recently. The difference is now with the work that I'm doing that is dealing with stuff from way back when. I absolutely could not have done this work 5, 10, 15 years ago at all. I was not ready for it. In that time, I've learned to help myself out of the black hole with other people's help, and sort of maintain myself out of there. Now, I still have larger roller coaster moments than I would like, but I know how to handle them. I'm better at kind of leveling them back out these days, rather than just, oh my God, the world's coming to an end again. And I talk about it very openly. I did a film in 2018 on it, which may have been the clip that you saw. There was a bit about competition diving, and it's not a very long film. It's only about 6 minutes, and I do show that quite a lot when I do public speaking events. I do show that a lot because I think people connect with it quite well. And actually, we just we did another film in Mexico, which was pretty amazing.
Sounds rough.
In November, which this time actually had kind of live freediving footage rather than just competition footage from prior. And it's a very different sort of film. It's very beautiful because obviously the scenery and the guys filming it have actually made me look like I know what I'm doing underwater, which is lovely. And it's very beautiful, and it tells the story in a slightly different way. It's calmer. With the other one had a little bit of the kind of shock value, slightly. This one's a lot calmer, but still has that, it's very, every time I've seen it, I haven't seen the final cut yet, I'm hoping to see it before it's submitted.
It's dropped.
It still pulls on the heartstrings because it's still very emotional. I mean, it's my story. It's always going to be emotional to me, but I think it's so important to talk about this stuff, because it helps people realize that they aren't alone, and it's shit. It's utterly shit for an awful lot of people out there. And the more people kind of hear that, the more they can go, oh, I feel shit. Do you feel shit? Oh, let's have a conversation about it. And suddenly you're airing things, you're letting a little bit of steam out of the pressure cooker, and then it just becomes that little bit easier. And it eats the incremental little steps, little thing at a time. So
yeah, it's kind of a little bit like that, that kind of, progress, meme type thing. Progress is never linear like that. It's kind of this, but it's always kind of just tiny, just like, very step at a time going up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's quite interesting coming from where you were there, like as being a nurse and finding, seeing a lot of these people in A&E and that I see, it's so hard seeing sometimes some of these mental health people. And I'll be honest, as nurses, there's definitely, to a certain degree, when you start seeing the same people over and over again in A&E, there's definitely a slightly head banging against the wall kind of, oh god, they're back again type feeling, which is horrendous, but might as well be honest about it. But like,
human.
Well, exactly. And and in stressful situations, those, it's difficult, but those people, when you actually start talking to them, it's really what they want is to be able to like talk and unload and like
have someone hear them.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting from my perspective of working with some of the clients I've worked with, and this is, we won't leave mental health just yet, but it kind of ties it in with the breathing side of things. I've kind of found that a lot of these clients who come to see me who have been seeing therapists for a long period of time, the breath work that we then end up doing of like being able to get them to notice when things are beginning to peak or trough, or there's a change within their breathing, that actually it can help them. They can be unloaded, let's say at a session, they can begin to see how things work, but then it also, with the breathing side of it coming in, can allow them to have another tool which kind of goes, oh, actually, this is the start of me heading towards that awkward, uncomfortable, like I can't get out of this headspace place. And actually, I know the more I've kind of worked on my breathing, the more, I've deliberately put myself into discomfort because of breathing, I can actually see that's the same sensation that I get later on down this line. And maybe if I can begin to find a window of tolerance around this thing, then maybe it can help me further down the line.
Absolutely. And it's that awareness that you're repeating it and you're noticing it every time, that for your clients and for anyone, once they suddenly start noticing, oh, the breathing's changed and I know the route that this takes me to and I don't like it, you get that chance, you get that breather, that space to actually change and kind of take back control of what's going on in your body, hopefully, and calm the mind, and have a very, very different outcome. I come from a medical family, and when I started the breath work, I knew I wanted to go the route of the medically backed studies and science, because I would have been laughed out of town if I didn't. And it's always been my bent anyway. I'm always much more orientated towards the sciences. So
myself too.
I can't remember what I was going to say now. There was an amazing point there, and I just talked myself out of it. Brilliant.
Just about how the science-backed kind of papers of towards the mental health sides of things. No, it's gone. They'll come back to you in a minute.
I'll let you know.
But so with that then, because obviously the science side of things, I assume, because you're a potato practitioner. So did you practice with Patrick? Did you train with Patrick?
Well, yes, I did the training with Patrick. I gathered a lot of knowledge from a lot of places. And obviously, as you appreciate, the more you work with different people, the more things you pick up, the more you read. There's a wealth of knowledge scientifically backed just on Instagram, for starters. with people sort of promoting bits and pieces. So there's a massive amount of information. It's not just all under one roof. I base most of my breath work around the Buteyko method, but I use a lot of nuggets swiped from other places as well. And my father, who's 81, I kind of started him doing a program. I mean, when I first started this 5 years ago, he sort of turned around and said, I don't know why you're bothering to do, it's a waste of time. And I dropped the odd nugget into the conversation. And then about a year later, he went, and he's been doing his own HIIT classes in the morning, 7-minute HIIT classes for 35 years. Amazing. He's 81 now. And he turned around to me about a year and a half ago and said the number of repetitions that he's doing of his press ups and his sit ups and things is back to how it was 15 years earlier.
Wow, there you go.
He's breathing through the nose. I've even got him doing lighter breathing and breath hold stuff as well. Amazing. While he's exercising. He's my best student, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and he's 81.
And that's, I mean, that just goes to show, doesn't it? Because you know, I've worked with a few like high-end athletes, but like, you know, even those high-end athletes, when you actually work with them and then you introduce the breathing, like it doesn't matter whether you're 81 or whether you're a high-end athlete. Pretty much every single person, unless you have deliberately dedicated some time towards the breath, you can always improve.
Absolutely.
There's always improvements to be made. And, you know, and that goes for like your dad or like the athletes, like for your performance and your physical side of thing, but absolutely towards like mental health side too. Physical,
emotional, mental, you know, performance focus across the board, not to mention what's going on in a cellular level and how breathing correctly is actually helping us live longer, feel better.
Absolutely. I mean, being in, you know, again,
it
working
just goes
in A&E,
on and on.
I see all these patients who are in there and they're all, you know, mouth breathing. I mean, you can walk through the majors department, so the ambulance, you know, where the ambulance come into, you can walk through there and out of the 12 beds, you can almost guarantee like 10 or 11 of them are all mouth slung open. And, you know, when you do their blood gases, they're all kind of alkalotic, they're all, you know, blown off all their CO2, etc., etc. And actually just being able to get some of those people to try to bring the breathing back into the nose, to close the mouth, just to focus a little bit every time they see someone walk past, go, right, I need to breathe from my nose, breathe from my nose. And, you know, I've had patients who, whether like asthmatics or COPDs or stress, anxiety, chest pain through panic attacks, who have all managed to calm themselves and find much more comfortable places purely through the act of understanding and noticing their breathing.
And in a short space of time as well, making such an enormous difference in such a short space of time. I get very I have to hold my tongue because not everyone has asked for my advice, and yet the urge to yell at people when I'm walking on Hampstead Heath and they're running. Shut up.
Tell me about it. I'm the worst. Oh, well, I'm not. I mean, I do manage to keep to myself, but I say to my wife, through my breathing and through the movement therapy sides of things, where I kind of am watching how people are walking and seeing a foot turn out, or, you know, seeing a chest which only likes to bend one direction. I'm just like, doesn't like his left leg, can't bend his spine, head doesn't move. Look at that mouth slung open. Oh God. And you're like, just shut up. Don't know one.
If, nice walk. Just
if they wanted to know, then maybe they'd come and see me.
But the thing is, they don't know that they need to know this. So I still have this urge to yell at them.
But it's kind of one of those things, isn't it? Because I kind of feel, I found like on the social media, I kind of get fed up with it really. But, you know, I feel like I shout this stuff at the world and it just falls on deaf ears. But then, you know, you get the odd person here and there who then ends up saying that was amazing, that was fascinating, that's kind of changed, like, you know, I mean, mouth taping at night. I mean, I do it every night, and I still get every now and again, you know, and I've said it so many times, and I think I can't post about that again because I've done it so many, but you do it and then someone goes, oh, I tried that last night and I had the best night's sleep I've had in years. And you kind of like,
absolutely worth it.
Yeah. It's
You're
crazy.
you're very good at doing all those sorts of posts and things. I'm a bit, I get bogged
but
down
you've got
in the
beautiful
underwater
photos
instead.
You've got beautiful photos. Much better than mine.
I should be appealing to those. Here's the thing: the freediving audience, a lot of them know how to relax, but actually, I'm gonna really get myself in hot water for saying this, but I think an awful lot of them can improve their breathing massively.
I don't have a huge experience, obviously. So I was in Cyprus, but then I've also done a little bit in Cornwall with one of my friends type thing. But, and I was talking to her and she ends up diving with lots of spear fishermen, basically. Like, that's kind of the biggest thing on the coast down there is like the spear fishing community is pretty big. And she said she is fascinated by, so this is Amy, she's fascinated by all my stuff. And she wanted to try and organize some online breathing sessions with all of these spear fishermen. And they were like, nah, don't need that. Fine, nah. And she's like, oh my God, that it would be so beneficial and they could really get something out of it. But they just, don't want to, basically.
And I really am stepping out on a limb.
Do it.
Freedivers, they do a level 1, they do a level 2, they do some nice relaxed breathing. They start learning how to relax and they realize, oh, I can obviously relax way more than I ever thought I could do. Yeah. And they're partially doing it with their breathing, but it's the everyday stuff that can actually enhance everything so much if you start doing it every day, and just the little stuff and just making it how you breathe the entire time.
That's how
you
walk around the supermarket.
That's what's going to make the massive difference when it gets to you lying down and you doing your relaxation.
Yes. Well, that's what I feel like with my breath hold work. So I mean, I would love to be in Cyprus or somewhere like Croatia or somewhere hot and sunny and beautiful with amazing dives and stuff, but I'm not. I'm in Suffolk, so the North Sea is not. The North Sea is not ideal for diving. But and this is what I try to get across to any of my clients who come to see me is actually, you don't have to be able to hold your breath for 6 minutes. It's fucking pointless and ridiculous for most people. But I haven't got to that really through breath hold practice. So, yes, I do apnea practices, but I've got to that stage by spending my life breathing light and slow and deep and just and I walk around the supermarket and I will do little breath holds while I'm walking, or I will just practice breathing as little as I can for my dog walk or whatever it is, and actually trying to get people to realize that. And again, this definitely goes towards mental health, I've found, but like you can do little bits and focus on that one thing while you're out walking. And you don't have to have a dedicated practice. You just have to have an awareness, and actually how much that brings you into your own body can then have a knock-on effect for how you are in your own brain. Yeah,
no, completely. It certainly gives me that breaker between me being normal and me being absolutely extreme. And as you say, it is such a simple thing to do. And there are different things you can play with, but in essence, it affects every single quarter of our lives in huge ways. And why aren't we teaching children this? Why is this not standard curriculum at school? When I was at school, it was still oxygen's good, carbon dioxide's bad. That's the respiratory thing.
I mean, I think it would probably still be like that at school now.
I have this sneaky suspicion it may well be. And nitric oxide?
No one knows
what that is. But then, to be
Absolutely.
fair, nobody knew what that was until the 90s. So
That's very true.
early
And I
days.
guess education probably takes a little while to catch up. But
Yes.
I kind of, from my perspective of, I mean, I am currently trying to put bits together, and I've had a few teachers reach out to me and say, because I've done a few days in schools where I've kind of gone and taught breath work to a group of 15-year-olds or something. But I mean, it doesn't work with a random person coming in for 3 hours, like, because the kids don't trust you type thing.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to put together in my head, and I've just been writing a thing about it, but like to send into these teachers, is actually I should come and teach you guys, because actually you're all probably stressed to shit anyway.
Yes.
And actually teach the teachers to understand the very basics of it, and how they can then put it perhaps into the very beginning of their class. Because I've said this a few times on the podcast, but Matt Dewar, who I did a podcast with ages ago, he works in schools with breath work, with breathing and stuff like that. And he did a bit of a, N=1 type experiment with this kid, and basically got them to hyperventilate and then read a passage, and then essentially recount what they'd just read and what it was about. And they didn't have a clue. It was just like they'd read it, but none of it had gone in. And then he did the same, but basically got them to downshift, to breathe slow, but got them to reread it, and they read it a treat. And and they could remember what they'd said. And you're like, well, if you could get teachers, and again, this ends up having to go probably from the youngest age of kids, I guess, because as they get to teenagers, they're probably going to scoff at it and not want to do it. But like, if you could get it so that kids at the beginning of every lesson did 3 or 4 minutes of slow breathing, like that could have a massive effect on their general physiological understanding of themselves
and learning.
And how many kids at the moment are stressed out of their brain coming up to exams, and like, I've got friends with kids who are absolutely terrified of walking into an exam hall and like near enough having panic attacks. And you're kind of like,
too young.
This should be where there's been an education of what your body's doing, and how you've, without realizing it, ended up hyperventilating and panicking, and you're not getting oxygen to your brain, blah 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 blah. And that those kids could have so many more tools. And
it's very interesting, because I do go into schools and businesses as well, and it's geared around the mental health, and I talk about the freediving because it's a beautiful entree into mental health. And coming back to what you said, what you were asking me at the beginning, how freediving intersected with mental health for me. I didn't find freediving until 2011, so I was well on my way to improvement by that stage. And when I did my first dive, I was like, this is what I've always been looking for, this peace and calm and quiet.
So how old were you then? Sorry,
I was 39.
39.
So never wanted to walk the standard working career path.
But doesn't that say something though, of like, at 39 you managed to still find something, which we'll go into, but you've broken records of, I mean, if, like I say, I'll be putting your Instagram on the feed so people can see it, but like, it's like stunning. And maybe freediving isn't for everyone. I know a lot of people panic about it and stuff, but yeah, that first dive, go into that a bit more.
I was always a water baby. As a child, I'd turn around and say I'd rather swim somewhere than walk, even if it wasn't even possible. The idea of me actually stepping one foot in front of another just didn't compute in my brain. I'm a fish, I want to swim. And I did scuba. I was lucky enough to do some scuba as a teenager.
Right.
And then I was away traveling. I was going off to Thailand traveling with a friend who wanted to do their scuba. And I sort of said, find me a school that does freediving. I'd watched The Big Blue back in 1990. God, those were the days. On a kind of
VHS.
a rainy Sunday afternoon in the common room. I was at boarding school, and I remember it very clearly, just thinking, wow, that's really cool. But it took me 24 years to get around to trying it, and I wasn't trying the actual discipline that they do in the film. But my first dive, I came up from it, and I had an instructor and an assistant instructor, and they both kind of looked slightly terrified at me and like, are you okay? And I was just like, I'm home. This is what I was looking for. Every scuba dive, I would do exactly what you're not supposed to do, and I would breathe really slowly but hold my breath in between, because I didn't like the noise of all the bubbles. I didn't like all the clunky equipment. So when I had this first dive of 3 meters for 15 seconds, we are not talking a big dive.
No.
And it was just intensely blue, and the water was.
Where was that?
It was in Koh Tao in Thailand, and the depth was probably about 8 meters. I couldn't go very far, and there was sand that I could see, but it was just, I was suddenly brought into the now, kind of like I'd stuck my fingers in the socket, but in a really nice way. And I was just there in that instance. The voice in my head complaining about the person I was traveling with, all that kind of stuff, it just disappeared. And I was like, relief at the peace and quiet and beauty. And I was just like, oh my God, this is it. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, it's one of those things of the amount of people who, when I was freediving in Cyprus, and then I came home, or, online and stuff, they're like, you're insane. That's mental. What are you doing? That's like terrifying. Why are you doing? And I was like, but you have no choice but to be serene, essentially. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like the strangest thing of like, it should be terrifying, i.e. I'm holding my breath and I'm diving essentially vertically down. And yet, because it's that, it's like, I don't know, and maybe this goes back to that kind of mammalian dive reflex, like the fact that we came from water. I don't know, but I've maybe had one experience of meditation which kind of came close to the peace. And I've meditated a lot. Like when I was in India, I spent, every day, hours and hours at a time meditating. And I never got the quiet and the peace that I got pretty much, not every dive, but majority of the times I dived.
One of the gifts, without sounding too naff, that freediving gives is it allows us to challenge what we think we're capable of. If you dive right, first rule of freediving being never do a breath hold near water by yourself. Second rule, dive with a buddy who can look after you and you can look after that. And as you progress to depth, you do it slowly when your body and mind are ready together. Now, if you do that sensibly and slowly, you get this opportunity to actually view this kind of, let's call it a picket fence, a boundary of what you think you're capable of. And you get to go, oh, does that stake wobble a little bit? And yes, it does. And I can go a meter deeper than I thought. And when you're down at 10 meters and you're holding onto the line, and you look up at the surface of the water and you're just like, this is stunning.
Yeah.
I'm not panicking because I know I can go back. It's just a few pulls. I'm perfectly safe. I'm relaxed, I'm in control. That confidence that gives you, then you take it to dry land where you're breathing at the same time. Oh my God.
Yeah.
There aren't many other sports, I think, that in such a gentle, wholesome way, ironically considering that it's considered such an extreme sport, that it gives you that gift if you let it. It's really magical. I call it the extreme sport of relaxation.
I like that. That's really good.
Most of the time.
Absolutely. And especially, I mean, I only really managed to find like the free fall, like maybe at the last couple of dives type thing. Because it was in Cyprus, that, you know, the thermal climb was at like 19 meters or something. And I only did a couple of dives, kind of much, and it kind of kicked in around like 18, 19 meters. And anyway, so I was kind of diving, and it, like, in case people don't know, like there's different levels of buoyancy in the water. So there's like negative buoyancy and positive, and then there's a little bit where you kind of can float around, and and like that
on the
feeling
surface,
of,
just to explain for everyone, on the surface you're positively buoyant, especially if you're wearing a wetsuit, which will hold you up, which means you can relax more and be as comfortable as possible in the water, and using, you know, breathing as quietly and calming down everything. Then you have the neutral buoyancy, where if you go down to that, you can hold, because we're always diving on a line, attached to a line. You can hold the line between two fingers and just float in the water column. You're not going up or going down. And then there's the negative buoyancy, which is with what you're talking about for the free fall, where, over to you.
Well, yeah, so basically you kind of cross this bit, and then you can just do nothing, and yet you descend down. So I managed to get, I probably just, you know, 2 or 3, maybe 4 meters of like free fall. And that's I mean, I was comfortable, but I was definitely starting to get to my limit then. But like, it's the weirdest, like internally smiling feeling of like, I'm literally doing nothing and I'm just
Flying underwater.
Just flying, exactly, flying underwater. And then, you know, for me, again,
until the brain goes, oh, you've got to come back, at which point it's, what the hell?
Exactly. And then the weird thing is, I mean, I don't know whether I never really asked anybody out there, I guess, but like for me, I would, as soon as I flipped my head, so I was then upright again. So I was no longer head down. I came up. It's like my entire brain went, "No, you're fine, mate. You're fine." Like, probably not enough that I could then turn around and go back. But the feeling of no. But the feeling of like going down, I just, you know, I would get that feeling of like, "No, you're done now." Yeah, and then I would kind of come back.
Well done you for listening to that, because there are, as a beginner and the excitement of it all, it's easy to go deeper than you should, do faster,
and you know, and so that's really cool. And I wanted, don't get me wrong, like the ego obviously wanted to hit 25 meters. Do you know what I mean? Like I got 24.4 or something, and in my head I was like, I should have fucking gone for 25. But like I got to that point and I was like, nah. But
you know what? It's not like getting older, where age 7 you're 7 3/4.
Yeah.
You don't start off as a free diver and go, I did 19.8. So that's a 20-meter dive. I'm still doing that now, and I'm coming into my oh no, wait, I started free diving 2013. I got that wrong. So I'm coming into my 10th year of free diving, and I'm still like, oh, I did 0.9. That must be rounding it up to the next meter. So that always happens.
But it was just, it's almost like my head going up. It's like my lungs just suddenly felt like, oh, the air's in the right direction now. And then, you know, and I could, you know, I would just quite comfortably just like find that rope and guide myself back up. And but it's, you know, I don't know, I guess there's going to be people who do get the fear in that situation, and it's probably not for them, but it's just something I didn't get.
I genuinely think it's actually a sport for everyone. I get that some people are terrified of water, and I would actually urge them to take swimming lessons to get over that, because it's such an empowering sport, swimming anyway, just being able to control your body in water. I'm obviously not talking about a storm in the ocean or anything remotely dangerous, but just in a swimming pool, to be able to swim is such an empowering thing. And I would love for everyone to naturally learn to swim. But free diving it offers so much. And if you go to it slowly and you progress by 1 meter and you feel comfortable physically and mentally, because it's not just a physical sport, you mentally have to be prepared for it. If you aren't prepared and relaxed and calm, your body will tense up, and you're playing with pressures. The deeper you go, the more pressure your body is subjected to. And if
Yeah.
you have tension there, rather than being all nice and soft and squishy, so your air spaces can adapt and become smaller, if there's tension there, you end up tearing things, and then it becomes an incredibly dangerous sport. So
Yeah.
you go to it gently, slowly, 1 meter at a time, properly enjoying the process. And I have to keep reminding myself of this. It's not the mythical number at the end of the line. It's actually each dive you do, you want to enjoy each dive, and so that you never feel that. I mean, I train specifically, so when I'm diving deep and I get to the bottom, I take my tag, I never panic. There's never any panic and I dive. I just turn, okay, now we go back up. And I set off and I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm focused on exactly what I need to do.
So you talk there about like deep diving. So what are you talking deep diving? What's your, because you've obviously set a few like British records.
Yeah, a few years ago, back in the good old days before the pandemic in 2019.
Yeah, ruined everything.
Yeah, I haven't competed for a while. I was doing 76 meters down and back.
76 meters. So that is approximately
210
feet.
25 in a modern building.
Yeah.
Office block. Each floor is 3 meters.
Right.
It's 25 stories. Think about going up and down that in a lift.
It's pretty big.
Which I don't tend to, because I think about that and I go, what am I doing? I'm an absolute lunatic. So I tend to think of it in terms of kind of horizontal measurements rather than.
That is crazy, actually, when you say that, isn't it? And you think 25 stories. How
often do you go up 25 stories? Not real.
I mean, at the hospital I'll sometimes take patients to the ward, and there's a 7-story building there, and I'll go up like 5 or 6 of them to one of them wards. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like
Big Ben, the Elizabeth Tower that Big Ben is in, that has the Parliament, that is 96 meters high, and that's currently the UK record for women with a monofin.
Wow.
One of these days I'd like to be that. I have no idea when it might be, or if it will be, but I'd love to try.
I mean, yeah, I would just love to try and get back out into the
when
water.
You look at that.
It is. I mean, it's crazy, and you just. I mean, and also, so for anybody, and I'll put the video in the show notes, people can watch it too. Your last film, but and so because you obviously talk through your free dive record in that, and so when you did that one, and again the feelings, because you said there's no panic, there's no you get to the bottom, you get your tag, you turn around at the bottom. When you got that, did you think at that point, was it still just like head clear, off we go? Or
it has to be, because it's the last few meters of the dive, the last 10-15 meters, and then doing your surface protocol correctly, that you are most likely to come unstuck, shall we say. So as you're coming back up, the air spaces are expanding, and depending on how long you've spent down at depth, you've been gently using up your oxygen supplies and creating carbon dioxide, which is giving you probably quite impressive contractions towards the later stages of the dive. But as everything expands, and especially in those last 10 meters, because it goes from half size to full size, from 10 meters back up to the surface, you can potentially, suddenly your brain will be going, where's all the oxygen gone? Because it's very, when everything's compressed, it's very easy for the oxygen to get into the bloodstream. As it expands back out again, and you've used a lot of it, suddenly the brain's going, hello. So we train very specifically on the surface protocol, where you have to remove any facial equipment you're wearing. You then give a signal like that, and then you have to say, I'm okay. And you have to do all of that within 15 seconds of starting to remove your equipment. And you have a total of 30 seconds to do that. So we train it very specifically. So it's done by repetition rather than thinking, oh, I'm coming to the surface now, and now I have to do it. I mean, it becomes pure habit. That's the idea behind the training. And then after that point, if the judges have decided it's a clean dive and you showed them the tag and they've given you the white card, then you celebrate. As you're coming up to the surface, and I've done this and I know many people do that, you feel this, ooh, and you're like, no, calm it down.
Yeah.
You're not done yet. The job is not finished. Celebrate when you've got the white card. So
and so in those big dives then, because obviously people talk to me and people ask me about, because I've put little videos of my contractions when I'm doing my long breath hold. So I did like a 4.5 minute like apnea thing the other day. And so I just pretty much set a camera up next to me and my, you could see my whole abdomen contracting and stuff like that. Being down at that depth when you come back up. So, I mean, how long was the dive to 76
meter dive?
76.
The 76, which is the deepest one I did in 2019. The one on the video you're talking about is 2017.
Okay.
76 meters is a 3-minute dive.
Wow.
If I get contractions on the descent, they're generally psychological ones. I don't consider them to be proper ones. It's just my brain kind of going, are you sure you want to go?
What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing?
Kind of.
Is this sensible?
And then I have a little chat with it, which I can't do in the swimming. This is why I don't do free diving distance in the swimming pool, because I don't get time to have that chat with my brain going, I'm actually fine. There aren't any major problems. I don't need to turn around. At the moment I feel uncomfortable in the swimming pool, that's it. I've come up. So I prefer the depth for that reason.
Because you have to stay down to a certain degree. If you turn around,
such a long way to go. You're like, well, can I relax a bit more? Yeah, go on, let's give it a try, see what happens. And those are the dives that invariably end up actually being much, much nicer, because I've actively focused on relaxing even more in them, because I've had this little conversation with stressy Helena going, it's okay, you're all right, we can turn around if we need to. I don't do the puppet movements though. I'm trying to be a bit more
that's a waste of oxygen. It's a waste of oxygen. Do you like, what was I going to say there? I was going to bring up something about the CO2 there.
Sorry, the contractions, I do have them on the way back up. They are quite a lot stronger, but I am, the analogy I said earlier about my warm-up hang, so I'm hanging on a line, I feel very safe, I'm doing a breath hold of nearly 4 minutes, I'm feeling the contractions building, and I'm kind of using the analogy of, these aren't my contractions, I'm in a womb.
Yeah.
And I let them go through me. I was holding onto the line and letting the contractions go. I let them go through me. So I'm actually quite good at being relaxed with the contractions. They do obviously get quite strong, and they are full-on contractions as I'm nearing the end of the dive. If you fight them, you're going to be in trouble. As you do with a dry hold. Down to the nitty-gritty, some of your listeners might not be ready for it. The peeing thing, when you do a breath hold as part of the mammalian dive reflex, it stimulates the production of lots more fluids. You end up peeing a lot, which as any honest freediver will tell you, they end up peeing in the ocean in their wetsuit a lot. Sorry,
I found that with me doing my dry stuff, because obviously I spend more time doing this, like I went through a stage where my urge to pee on my longer breath holds outdid my urge to breathe. So therefore I would need to pee before I would need to breathe. So therefore, but I had to stop, because I can't piss on the floor. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I'm pretty certain. I mean, I could blame all the dogs, I guess.
In the bath. No, I understand that one. And if you're doing dry breath holds, you really do need to pee beforehand.
Yes, you do. But the crazy thing is, so when I was doing, this was maybe 18 months ago, I guess, and I was doing lots of them, and I'd be lying on my bedroom floor doing them. And I'd go as long as, no, I'm going to have to go for a pee. I'd stop, go and have a pee, come back, go for my next round. But my body still go, yep, you're going for pee again. I was like, there's nothing left. How am I needing to pee again?
Well, I look forward to the day that you get the neoprene pee, where I now smell my wetsuits, the smell of neoprene, and I'm starting to getting dressed. I'm thinking, yeah, I really do need to pee already. You know, you put one foot in the water, you're like, yeah, dive reflex
Yeah.
is still strong. You know, or it's like Pavlov's dog. We're all
Yeah,
conditioned. The smell of neoprene, the foot in the water. Yeah, that's it. Game over. Can't be helped. So yeah, hydration is important.
And it's I mean, it's sort of, even, I mean, my time in Cyprus was like, also, you can't help but, you know, you're lying in water and sort of relaxing, down breathing through, but the amount of salty water you get in and around your mouth doesn't half dry you out, and like it's crazy. Like it's a crazy world, but it's kind of one of those things where, for me, and maybe this is my perspective on it, and I know I've kind of spoken and heard other freedivers say it type thing, but like that ability to essentially have those contractions, whatever else. And again, mine is mostly dry. You know, I've done obviously some, and hopefully more in the future, but it definitely has allowed me to have like a greater window of tolerance for stress. And like you say, you can't help but you have to be relaxed. And that horrible sensation of contractions beginning to kick in, telling you that you need to do something when you don't want to, and actually being able to relax, trying and being able to relax around it has definitely, I feel, I mean, I've always been relatively laid back, but like has helped me be even more so.
It's quite interesting. It's very much the stepping just slightly out of your comfort zone, and in a controllable way, and how much that actually helps resilience.
Yeah, and I think that's what, unfortunately, is missing so much today in, let's say, in the youth, not just the youth at all, because there's I feel even people my age, you know, kind of the mid 30s, like 40, like there is, I mean, my phone's over there, but like phones and stuff, like the attention span, the shit people deal with, like, you know, I don't know, always wanting something else, like, and you know, things go wrong, you start needing to, I don't know, go shopping, or, you know, find some outlet, whatever else.
Yes.
But that complete lack of resilience of being able to kind of go, okay. And again, this is where I guess Buddhism has always been like 3,500 years ahead of everyone else. But like, you know, you're going to suffer, like, so suffer, you might as well just suffer well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Cope with it as best as possible, relax through it, breathe through it, unless you're holding your breath. And get over troubled waters is, what's the phrase?
No, I'm just
get
thinking
over rough ground lightly,
right
rough ground lightly, or oil on troubled waters, or whatever, which is always a funny phrase, because I thought if you poured oil on water and
just sit on the top,
dropped a match, there'd just be flames. And quite horrifying, but there you go. That's where my strange mind took that. But going back to something you said earlier about the children and schools, and how valuable, you're absolutely right. It's a point of getting them to trust you, and having a reason for them to listen to what you're saying, so that they'll take it on board. And I liked what you were saying about the chap, how he did exercise and got them. I was up in God, use your words, Helena, you have plenty. Scotland, Glasgow, quite a few years ago, 2019 actually, and there was 2020, just before pandemic. We did a weekend at kind of a summer camp place in Scotland. They do exist, right by Loch Long, I think it was, or something, I can't remember. And we had the kids for a whole weekend, and the thing was, it was a different time thing then, because I had time with them, and I did my talk, and then we did breathing exercises. But to see them kind of there was one girl who absolutely blew me away, because I'd done a talk on breathing and we were doing some exercises, and we had like 15 minutes left. And I was like, who's game to give it a try? And she'd just kind of 40 seconds had just gone, nah, kind of. And she was very much a teenager who you were like, yeah, she's not going to go for it. And her friend stuck up her hand. So she went, oh yeah, all right. And I said, okay, so you've done 40 seconds. Brilliant. Don't beat yourself up for that. Now just say, okay, I've done 40 seconds. Let's just see where we can go from there. And she did it again, and she did 2.5 minutes.
Wow.
Out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, when I said, well, how is that? She was like, yeah, well, it's all right, whatever. Completely brushed it away. And I called her out on it, hopefully in quite a compassionate way, saying, don't do that. These are the little steps that you do every day that make the huge flipping difference. This is the stuff you look back on and go, I did that. That was really cool. And even if you're not broadcasting it and shouting it to people, which can be a bit arrogant, to kind of really hold on to that and go, actually, yes, I'm not bad at that. And her whole demeanor changed for the rest of the weekend, and she became so much more engaged and so much more. And because she did, other people did as well.
Yeah.
Other students did as well. And but it really is. I think what helps me is when I go into schools, and especially schools, I talk about the mental health. So I'm very openly vulnerable, and horrifically, that connects far more with students than it should do.
Yes.
And that's devastating.
I was going to say
it does connect with.
Unfortunately, that's a very well, I mean, that's what's needed, I guess, is like, for one, I think I kind of feel that kids feel completely isolated more and more. Like, I saw someone post something that said like social media has brought us closer to people on the other side of the planet, but left us further away from the people next to us. And that's kind of the case. And I think actually a kid who doesn't feel comfortable talking face to face, they just deal through text and whatever else, having someone actually stand in front of them and go, I have gone through the worst of the worst and managed to come out the other side, and these are the feelings I've had and whatever else. Suddenly they go, no one's ever said that to me in person before. Like there's actually someone who stood here, like flesh and blood and skin and bone, who maybe understands something that I feel. And as you say, that then probably leads into, okay, well, maybe doing some of this breath stuff there might be something behind it. And even if I take, do you know what I mean? Even if one of them took one tiny little thing out of it that they managed to do, it would be, it'd be pretty amazing. Because talking about why kids don't do it, I don't know why, but like there's that help coach or whatever, I don't know what, life coach, or Jay Shetty, and he's got a book like Be More Monkish, or I don't know, something along those lines. But he in like the first chapter or something like that, I haven't read it, my wife was, but he basically says in that, like when he moved to India to like the Shala that he stayed in when he was being a monk, the kids, the older kids taught the younger kids how to sit and breathe. And it was like, it was passed on like down. And it was like, that's so good. I mean, like, because actually kids will probably pick up from other kids better in many ways. And I don't know, it fascinated me that that kind of culture and that kind of place had this whole different take on.
Which is so much healthier.
Yeah.
I genuinely worried about the levels of, and I'm not really a fan of the phrase, but it does sum it up. The suicidal ideation, I think, is a very hidden crisis that's going on. That the number of not just children, and to varying degrees of people who are struggling and having suicidal thoughts, I think is probably far more prevalent than we actually are remotely aware of. And then you take into account the fact that half the population has probably been brought up to go, you're a man, you don't talk about that sort of thing. You're expected to be strong and silent.
And then the crazy thing, we were talking, like before we started, about like how things are different for men and women, but like, you know, you look at that state where men have been told basically to a certain degree, stiff upper lip, just shut your mouth, get on with it, you know, you'll be right, just crack on, go back to work.
Be a man, get on with it.
And the numbers are crazy. I can't remember what they are now, but it's like, you know, men between, is it like 25 and 40, like they're the most, you know, it's outrageous, the numbers. But on the same, other side of the same coin, you know, women getting to, and, you know, we were talking beforehand about the two previous podcasts, one with Jamie and one with, or a couple of previous podcasts, Jamie and Sally, where women's health, hormones, menopause has all come up. You know, unless more can be done to allow women to actually begin to notice and understand that what they're feeling as they go through those, like, there's ways and means to help, like, you not feel quite so crazy and mental, because it's completely out of your control. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like you're thinking, I'm just going to be fucking a mental cow for the next like 6 years.
I didn't want to be. But yeah, no, I mean, the point you're making is that the medical world, Western world, has essentially been based on men.
Mm-hmm.
And women are only just beginning to become, actually, they're not little men. They are in some ways totally different to men. So they need medicine, they need studies that's just for them, rather than sweeping it under the carpet. So yeah, there are many inequalities in all walks of life, and yeah,
but it's difficult, isn't it, when you look and you've kind of got women who have this huge, I mean, much worse than men, fluctuation in hormones and issues from which are going to really drive so many kind of mental, emotional, psychological issues. And then you've got men who are just essentially told to just crack on. And so both sides are just like, for different reasons, no one's actually
complete meltdown and not able to help themselves or know what to do. It's heartbreaking and horrifying.
It's and you know, and the problem is, I find that it seems like more is being said via social media, but unfortunately I find that a lot of it isn't for the right reasons, let's say. And I kind of it's just, and yeah, it's so bloody hard, really. So
it is, but you know, in its defense, I think certainly long COVID, the social media aspect of that has helped medical institutions catch up a little bit with what's going on. Still bitter that governments weren't talking about nose breathing at the start of the pandemic, but hey.
No, not at all. I mean, I still don't think they're doing it now, but there you go.
Well, to be extremely controversial, Big Pharma doesn't like the idea of it. So, you know,
tinfoil hats, but they're tinfoil, like it's
tinfoil hats and tablets.
I mean, there was bloody on that note, like, about COVID, and like at one point, this is going back 18 months, because me and Patrick talked about it, but like, you know, they were doing a drug that was basically nitric oxide that you like sniffed or you inhaled to help with COVID. And you're like, just breathe through your nose and hold your breath a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, before we get too far down that hole, let's
I can feel the heat beginning to go.
I know. Let's not go too crazy on that one. But let's round it up, because unfortunately, I can't believe we've done over an hour. It's
over
mental.
An hour already. I think we can probably talk for a lot longer as well.
A lot longer. Like we said at the beginning, we can both talk, it would seem, and my wife will definitely clarify that one. But as always, the only real question I ever ask, the podcast is called Move, Breathe, Live. I want to, as a nurse, as a sort of come from that background, I want to try to hopefully have a podcast which can help people move, breathe, and live a happier, healthier life. So have you got any suggestions that we can bring to people and hopefully help them move, breathe, or live a happier, healthier life?
Yes, this one is probably geared most towards people who are really struggling with their mental health. But,
Yeah.
you know, actually, I use it rather more than I would like to admit I do. There are so many tools that you can use to help your mental health, which, you know, the freediving's been great for me because, you know, I really pay attention to my sleep. I breathe better. I take exercise. I get out in nature. You know, all the things I'm doing for my training actually, ironically, happen to be really good for my mental health. It's a bucket load of tools. You
Yeah.
don't have to do all of them. You just need
Yeah.
to start with one little thing. I many years ago, when I was trying to write a blog, I wrote one blog and I titled it "Just Move Your Foot." You know, on the days when you can barely even get out from under the duvet, and the idea of brushing your teeth is just almost impossible, just take that one tiny step out of bed. Then stop, breathe, you know, take your time, but just keep trying to push forwards. You know, there are so many tools, and sometimes it can just be so overwhelming that it makes me turn around and run in the opposite direction. Just pick one thing and focus on it. And if that gets you a little bit further forward, then that's amazing. And that's brilliant. And you kind of celebrate that. Doesn't feel like celebrating, but you celebrate that. So
amazing. As you said at the beginning, it's that thing of like nothing's linear. Like it's going to have ups and downs and rounds and rounds and falls and lifts. But actually, as you say, like if you can take that one step and then you can like celebrate that one step, then that's as good, you know, as good as you can hope for. And
if you can combine that with nose breathing, you know, you're in a good starting place. You really
always
are.
Nose breathe. Always nose breathing more.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Get it in there.
Always get it in there. Jam it in. Well, Helen, thank you so much for this. It's been an absolute joy. Hopefully I'll get to come and dive with you at some point. I'd love to get underwater with you. Where are you?
I might be in Cyprus in September. There may be a big competition, World Championships in Cyprus in September.
Amazing.
That I may
in Larnaca? Is it the Freedom diving ones?
I think no, that's the October competition.
Right. Well, let me know anyway, because if I can make it work, then I'd love to come hang out and maybe go for a little dive. That'd be amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, there are certainly plans afoot for this year. If I can rob a bank and find the money, I'll be doing all of it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a
we'll
great,
end this and say
chat.
goodbye off camera, but thank you all for having a listen. If you want to check Helena out, I will put all of her details below. There'll be the video, there'll be her Instagram, her website. So if you want to go and do some breathing with Helena, there'll be a link there you can do. And yeah, anything else you want to add to any of that, or any other sites people can go to?
Thank you for sticking with us till the very end.
Amazing. Exactly. Thank you all, as always. And I shall see you all very soon.